A white woman storms up to a black chef working quietly in his food truck, her face filled with anger. She slams her hand on the counter, startling everyone nearby. "What are you doing here?" she snaps, her voice dripping with accusation. "You don't belong here. This is a respectable neighborhood, not a place for people like you." The chef looks up from his cooking, calm and collected, trying to understand what just happened. Politely, he says, "Ma'am, I'm just running my food truck. Serving the community, that's all." But his calm response only fuels her rage. She narrows her eyes, stepping closer. "I don't believe you. You must be dealing drugs or something shady. I'm not going to let you ruin this area." Without hesitation, she pulls out her phone and dials 911, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I need police here immediately. There's a suspicious man in a food truck, and I'm sure he's up to no good." Her words send a wave of unease through the bystanders, who begin whispering and recording the scene on their phones. The chef tries to stay composed, but the tension is building. Nearby customers, unsure whether to intervene, watch in silence. The sound of approaching sirens fills the air, and the woman smirks triumphantly. She crosses her arms, convinced she's about to see this man dragged away in handcuffs. Just as the police car pulls into view, another figure emerges from the crowd. What is going on here? A commanding voice cuts through the chaos, and heads turn to see a tall man in a sharp suit. His presence exudes authority. He strides confidently toward the food truck. The woman falters for a moment but quickly regains her composure. "Who are you?" she snaps. "This man is trespassing and I called the police." The man raises an eyebrow. "I'm his boss," he says firmly, his gaze locking onto hers, "and I think you've made a very big mistake." The woman's smug expression begins to fade, replaced by confusion and unease as she realizes this is not going as she expected. The crowd leans in closer, waiting to see how this confrontation will end. What happens next will leave everyone speechless. Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories. "Hey, what do you think you're doing here?" Karen Blake's voice cut through the park like a knife. Her finger jabbed in the direction of David Carter, the black chef calmly working in his food truck. She stood with her arms crossed, her expression radiating disdain. "You're trespassing. People like you don't belong here," she snapped, her voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby parkgoers. David glanced up briefly, his hands busy flipping burgers on the sizzling grill. His face remained calm, though the insult stung. He'd heard it before, but today was different. The crowd around the food truck began to grow as Karen's accusations became louder. David wasn't just any chef. His reputation for crafting mouth-watering dishes had made his food truck a beloved staple in the community. But to Karen, none of that mattered. She saw only one thing: a black man in her neighborhood. She jabbed at her phone, dialing the police. "I'm calling this in. You're clearly up to no good," she declared, her voice trembling with misplaced authority. The people waiting in line exchanged awkward glances. A mother whispered to her child, "That's the chef who makes your favorite burgers." Another customer muttered, "How can she say that? He's done nothing wrong." Karen didn't care about their opinions. She stepped closer to the truck, glaring at the sign that read, "Carter's Cuisine." "What's your name? Where's your license? I'm sure you don't have the proper permits," she spat. Her relentless questioning was meant to intimidate, but David stayed focused on his work, his calmness a quiet act of defiance. Karen's tone grew sharper. "People like you think you can take over our spaces," she accused, turning to the crowd as if looking for backup. "Why is no one stopping him?" But her words only created a ripple of unease among the onlookers, who silently watched the scene unfold. David, though outwardly composed, felt the weight of her words. He was no stranger to these moments, but each one carried a fresh sting. He knew he had nothing to prove. but he couldn't ignore the tension that Karen was stirring. And yet, he refused to give her the reaction she craved. Karen's boldness reached its peak when she barked into her phone. "Yes, officer, he's here right now. Come quickly." The crowd murmured in disbelief. A young girl whispered, "Why is she being so mean?" As her father shook his head in frustration. But what Karen didn't know was that David wasn't alone. His boss, a powerful figure who deeply respected him, was on his way. What would happen when he arrived would change everything and leave everyone, including Karen, completely stunned. Karen stood near the food truck, her phone pressed tightly to her ear, giving the police a dramatic account of the situation. "There's a suspicious man here claiming to run a food truck," she said. "He doesn't look like he belongs in this park. I'm sure he's up to something illegal." Inside the food truck, David stayed focused on his work, grilling burgers and wrapping tacos for his loyal customers. But his hands moved slower now, his mind racing. He glanced at the growing line of customers, each of them visibly uncomfortable. The park that was usually filled with laughter now felt tense and heavy. Karen was relentless. She stepped closer to the food truck window, pointing aggressively. "Where are your permits? Who let you set up here? I'm sure this truck isn't even yours," she barked. David finally responded, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, I have all the permits I need. I've been here for months, serving this community." But Karen wasn't listening. "I don't believe you," she yelled. "People like you always find ways to cheat the system." Her words were dripping with prejudice, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The tension grew as a couple of park-goers spoke up. "He's not doing anything wrong," one woman said, holding her child's hand. "He's just working." Karen whipped around, her glare silencing the woman. "You don't know what you're talking about. This isn't about you," she snapped. Turning back to David, she added, "The police are on their way, and they'll deal with you properly." David stood his ground. "I'll be happy to speak with the officers," he said. His calm demeanor seemed to enrage Karen even more. She leaned closer, her face red with anger. "You think you're so clever, don't you? We'll see about that when they get here." The crowd around the food truck had grown larger. Some people pulled out their phones to record the scene. Others whispered among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with Karen's behavior. One young man in the crowd spoke up. "Why are you targeting him? He's not hurting anyone." Karen shot him a sharp look. "Mind your own business. This doesn't concern you." But the crowd's murmurs grew louder. People were starting to side with David, seeing the injustice unfold before their eyes. Still, Karen refused to back down, doubling down on her accusations. David took a deep breath. He knew the police would arrive soon, and he had nothing to hide. But he also knew that Karen's false narrative could escalate things quickly. He silently hoped his boss, Mr. Peterson, would arrive soon. Moments later, the distant sound of sirens broke through the tense atmosphere. The crowd fell silent as the police car pulled into the park. Karen stood tall, a smug look on her face. "Here they are," she said, crossing her arms. "Let's see what you have to say now." David remained calm, stepping out of the truck to meet the officers. The crowd waited in anticipation, their phones still recording. But just as the officers began walking toward David, another car pulled up, a sleek black sedan. The door opened, and out stepped Mr. Peterson, David's boss. Tall and commanding, he immediately drew the attention of everyone in the park. His sharp suit and confident stride made it clear that he was someone important. Karen's smug expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. She had no idea who Mr. Peterson was, but she was about to find out. As Mr. Peterson approached, the police officers reached David, who stood calmly beside his food truck. One of the officers, Officer Williams, spoke firmly. "Sir, we received a complaint about an unlicensed vendor operating here. Can we see your permits and identification?" David nodded politely. "Of course, officer," he replied. He reached into a folder inside the truck and handed over his business license, health inspection certificate, and park vending permit. Everything should be up to date. Meanwhile, Karen hovered nearby, her arms crossed and a smug expression on her face. "I told you he was doing something illegal," she interjected. "People like him always are." David took a deep breath but remained silent. Officer Williams examined the documents carefully. His partner, Officer Garcia, looked around at the gathering crowd. Some people had their phones out, recording the interaction. "These documents appear to be valid," Officer Williams said after a moment. Karen's eyes widened. "That can't be right. He's probably using fake papers. You need to shut him down." Officer Garcia glanced at her. "Ma'am, unless there's evidence of a crime, we can't take action against him." Karen's face turned red. "I can't believe this. You're just going to let him get away with this?" David looked at the officers. "Is there anything else you need from me?" he asked calmly. Before they could answer, Karen stepped closer. "Don't act innocent. You're deceiving everyone here." David's patience was wearing thin, but he kept his voice steady. "Ma'am, I've done nothing wrong. I'm just trying to do my job." The crowd began to murmur. A woman spoke up. "I've been buying food from him for weeks. There's nothing wrong with what he's doing." A man added, "This is ridiculous. He's got all his permits. Leave the guy alone." Some in the crowd nodded in agreement, while others watched silently, unsure of how to react. Officer Williams turned to Karen. "Ma'am, unless you have concrete evidence of wrongdoing, we can't detain him." Karen threw her hands up in frustration. "This is unacceptable. You're supposed to protect us." Just then, Mr. Peterson stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Karen eyed him suspiciously. "And who are you?" He extended his hand to the officers. "I'm Thomas Peterson, owner of Peterson's Catering. David is one of my best chefs." Officer Garcia shook his hand. "Good afternoon, sir. We've reviewed his documents and everything seems to be in order." "Excellent," Mr. Peterson replied. He looked at David with a reassuring smile. "David, is everything okay?" David nodded. "Yes, thank you. Just a misunderstanding." Karen's confidence began to waver. "Wait, you're his boss?" "Yes," Mr. Peterson said, turning to her. "And I can assure you that David operates fully within the law. He's a valued member of my team." She stammered, But he shouldn't be here. This is a family park." Mr. Peterson raised an eyebrow. "Exactly why we chose this location, to serve the families and community members who enjoy this park." The crowd murmured in support. A young mother spoke up. "We love having his food truck here. The kids adore his sandwiches." Karen looked around, realizing the crowd was against her. "I was just trying to keep the community safe," she muttered. Officer Williams sighed. "Ma'am, unless there's something else, we need to conclude this matter." Feeling cornered, Karen snapped, "Fine, but don't blame me when something goes wrong." She turned on her heel and hurried away, her face flushed with embarrassment. Mr. Peterson watched her leave before addressing the officers. "Thank you for your professionalism, officers." Officer Garcia nodded. "Just doing our job, sir. Sorry for any inconvenience." David smiled gratefully. "I appreciate your understanding." As the officers left, the crowd began to disperse. Some people approached David to offer words of support. "Sorry you had to deal with that," a man said. "Keep up the great work," a woman added. "We love your food." David's expression brightened. "Thank you all. It means a lot." Mr. Peterson placed a hand on David's shoulder. "You handled that very well." "I just tried to stay calm," David replied. "But I'm glad you arrived when you did." Mr. Peterson nodded. "Always here to support my team." The atmosphere lightened as the line at the food truck began to form again. The sounds of laughter and conversation returned to the park. A teenage girl who had been recording the incident approached David. "I got the whole thing on video. People should see how you were treated." David considered for a moment. "Thank you, but I think it's best to move forward. Today was challenging, but the support from everyone here is what matters." She smiled. "You're really positive. That's inspiring." He chuckled. "I try to be." Mr. Peterson looked around at the bustling park. "How about we offer a discount today? Show our appreciation to the community." David grinned. "Great idea." He turned to the waiting customers. "Thanks for your patience, everyone. For the rest of the day, all items are half off." Cheers erupted from the crowd. The sense of unity and joy was palpable. Karen walked away but returned moments later, her phone still in her hand. She pointed at David. "This isn't over," she said loudly. "I want the police to do something about him." David stayed calm, his hands steady as he worked. Mr. Peterson stood beside him, keeping a watchful eye. The crowd murmured, unsure of what would happen next. Karen called for the officers again. "He doesn't belong here," she repeated. Her voice grew louder, but the crowd started to lose patience with her behavior. A woman in the crowd finally spoke up. "He's just doing his job. Why are you so bothered?" Karen ignored her and turned to Officer Garcia. "Aren't you going to do anything?" she asked, her voice sharp. Officer Garcia sighed. "Ma'am, we've already checked everything. He's not breaking any rules." At that moment, a man in a suit arrived. He was tall, confident, and looked directly at Karen. "What is going on here?" he asked firmly. It was the park administrator, Henry. Karen immediately pointed at David. "This man doesn't have the right to be here," she said. "He's probably running something illegal." Henry raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation," he said, "and it's completely false." Henry turned to David and smiled. "David is a licensed vendor and part of this park's community. He has my full support." The crowd clapped, showing their agreement. Karen's face turned red as she realized she was outnumbered. "I was just trying to protect the park," she muttered. "By harassing a local business?" Henry said firmly. "That's not how we do things here. We support inclusion and respect." The applause grew louder. Karen looked around, her confidence fading. She muttered something under her breath and walked away quickly, her head down. The crowd cheered as she disappeared from sight. Mr. Peterson patted David on the shoulder. "You handled that with such dignity," he said. David smiled, though his face showed some relief. "I've faced worse, but it still gets to you." A teenage girl who had been recording the entire time stepped forward. "This needs to go online," she said. "People need to see what happened." David nodded. "If it helps others understand why this kind of behavior is wrong, then go ahead. But let's keep the message positive. It's about respect, not hate." Henry stepped closer to David. "If you ever need anything, let me know. We're behind you." "Thank you," David replied. "It's good to feel supported." As the crowd slowly dispersed, loyal customers stayed back to offer kind words. "Don't let anyone stop you," one man said. "We'll keep coming back no matter what." Later, as the sun began to set, David took a moment to reflect. He turned to Mr. Peterson. "It's more than just food," he said. "It's about bringing people together. And you're doing exactly that," Mr. Peterson said. "You've inspired so many people today." David nodded. "No one can take that away." Karen's actions didn't end when she left the park. A teenage girl in the crowd had recorded the entire incident. Within hours, the video was uploaded online with the caption, "Racist woman harasses black chef in park. Watch what happens." The video quickly went viral. Social media platforms were flooded with comments. People from all over the world condemned Karen's behavior. Words like disgraceful and unacceptable appeared repeatedly. Many praised David for his calm and professional demeanor, calling him an example of strength under pressure. Local news outlets picked up the story. A segment aired showing the video of the incident and highlighting David's contributions to the community. One reporter said, "David is not just a chef. He's a symbol of resilience and unity. His food truck has been a staple in the park for years." David began receiving messages of support. "We're with you," one message read. "Don't let ignorance win." The backlash against Karen intensified. Her face became recognizable from the video, and her actions were criticized widely. Some of her neighbors even spoke out. "This isn't the first time she's caused trouble," one person said, "but this time, it's gone too far." Karen's employer also saw the video. They issued a statement condemning her behavior and confirming that disciplinary action would be taken. "We do not tolerate racism or harassment in any form," the statement read. Shortly after, news spread that Karen had been suspended from her job. Meanwhile, the support for David continued to grow. Customers lined up at his food truck, some just to shake his hand or offer a kind word. "We've never met," one man said, "but I saw the video and I wanted to tell you how much I admire your strength." David remained humble. "I'm just doing my job," he said. "It's overwhelming to see so many people stand up for what's right." Community leaders also stepped in. A local council member visited David at his food truck to offer support. "We need more people like you," she said. "You bring people together." Karen, on the other hand, struggled to recover from the incident. The public scrutiny took a toll on her, and she was forced to issue an apology. "I deeply regret my actions," she said in a statement. "I let my biases cloud my judgment, and I am truly sorry." Her apology was met with mixed reactions. Some felt it was insincere, while others believed it was a step toward accountability. "Apologies are important," one commenter wrote, "but actions speak louder than words." David, however, chose to focus on the positive. In an interview with a local news station, he said, "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move forward. I hope this incident sparks conversations about respect and inclusion." The video continued to circulate online, sparking debates about racism and the importance of standing up against injustice. Hashtags like #support David and End Racism trended for days. Celebrities even joined the conversation, amplifying the story's reach. The local community decided to honor David's resilience. A group of supporters organized a community gathering at the park, celebrating diversity and unity. "This is about more than one incident," the organizer said. "It's about creating a better future." At the gathering, David spoke to the crowd. "I'm grateful for all of you," he said. "This isn't just my story. It's our story. Together, we can make a difference." The crowd cheered, their voices echoing through the park. Karen's actions may have started the incident, but the community's response turned it into a powerful movement for change. David's story became more than just a viral video. It sparked change, not only in the community but in Karen as well. As public backlash continued, Karen found herself at a crossroads. She realized her actions had not only hurt David but had also exposed her own prejudices. Determined to make amends, Karen took the first step toward redemption. Karen reached out to David through a mediator. In a private meeting at the park, she apologized directly to him. "I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "I let my biases guide me and I disrespected you. I am truly sorry." David listened calmly. He could see the sincerity in her words, but forgiveness was not immediate. "It's not just about me," he replied. "It's about the larger issue of respect and equality. Words are important, but actions matter more." Karen took his words to heart. She began attending community workshops on diversity and inclusion. She also started volunteering at local organizations focused on fostering understanding and combating discrimination. Her efforts did not erase her past actions, but they marked the beginning of her transformation. Meanwhile, David continued to inspire others. A local advocacy group approached him with an idea to create a scholarship program for aspiring chefs from underrepresented communities. David agreed and donated a portion of his food truck's profits to fund the initiative. "This is about giving others the opportunities I've had," he said. The scholarship program gained traction, and local businesses joined in to contribute. Within months, the first recipients were announced. One young woman, inspired by David's resilience, expressed her gratitude. "Because of this opportunity, I can pursue my dream," she said. Karen, hearing about the scholarship program, decided to support it as well. She donated anonymously at first, but later revealed her involvement. "It's my way of making things right," she said. The community noticed Karen's efforts. While some remained skeptical, others saw her actions as a sign of genuine change. "We all have the capacity to grow," a community leader said. Karen's journey reminds us that accountability and redemption are possible. David and Karen's story also caught the attention of local schools. Teachers invited David to speak to students about resilience and respect. Karen joined him at one event, sharing her experience and encouraging students to confront their biases. "We're all learning," she said. "What matters is that we try to do better." The partnership between David and Karen surprised many, but it became a powerful symbol of progress. Their joint appearances at community events highlighted the importance of open dialogue and mutual understanding. "This isn't about forgetting what happened," David explained. "It's about using it as a lesson for all of us." Media coverage of their collaboration spread, reaching audiences far beyond the local community. National news outlets featured their story, framing it as a testament to the potential for change. "This is what growth looks like," one journalist wrote. "Two people coming together to make a difference." David's food truck became a hub for more than just great meals. It turned into a gathering place for discussions about social issues. Karen often joined these conversations, listening more than she spoke. "I have a lot to learn," she admitted, "but I'm committed to the journey." The scholarship program continued to grow, with more students benefiting each year. David's commitment to fostering opportunity inspired others to contribute. "This is bigger than me," he said. "It's about creating a ripple effect of kindness and understanding." Karen's transformation did not go unnoticed. Her actions demonstrated that redemption is not about erasing the past, but about actively working toward a better future. "It's not easy to face your mistakes," she said, "but it's necessary." In time, the community moved forward, strengthened by the lessons learned from the incident. David's resilience and Karen's accountability became a shared narrative, reminding everyone that change is possible when people are willing to listen, learn, and grow. David's story is a powerful reminder that resilience, kindness, and courage can turn even the most difficult situations into opportunities for growth. What started as a confrontation fueled by prejudice ended as a lesson for an entire community. Karen's actions may have initially reflected ignorance, but her willingness to change inspired many. Her journey toward accountability showed that even those who make grave mistakes have the potential to learn and make amends. "It's not enough to regret," Karen said during one of the events. "You have to act." David's response to the incident set the tone for everything that followed. Instead of retaliating with anger, he chose to handle the situation with grace. His actions not only diffused a tense moment, but also created a platform for meaningful change. "This isn't just my story," David said. "It's a story for anyone who's ever been doubted or disrespected." The ripple effects of this incident went beyond David and Karen. The scholarship program, the community discussions, and the growing network of support for underrepresented groups showed how one moment could lead to lasting change. Businesses, schools, and local leaders joined the effort, proving that progress is possible when people come together with a shared goal. The food truck became a beacon of hope in the community. Every day, people stopped by not just for David's meals, but for the sense of belonging it represented. "It's more than food," David explained. "It's about bringing people together." Karen's continued involvement in the scholarship program and community initiatives became a significant part of her redemption journey. Her vulnerability in admitting her mistakes and her dedication to making things right earned her a second chance in the eyes of many. "I can't undo the past," she said, but I can work every day to be better." The partnership between David and Karen became a symbol of reconciliation and growth. Their shared appearances at community events served as reminders that meaningful change requires open dialogue, humility, and consistent effort. David's story also reached far beyond the local community. National media highlighted the incident, and it sparked conversations about addressing biases and fostering inclusion. Schools and organizations across the country invited David to share his experience. His message was clear: respect and kindness are not optional, they are essential. As time passed, the community grew stronger. The once divided neighborhood became a hub for collaboration, with people from all walks of life working together to create a more inclusive environment. David's scholarship program expanded, and its success inspired similar initiatives in other areas. For Karen, the journey was ongoing. She continued to reflect on her actions and remained committed to being part of the solution. "I'll never stop learning," she said, "and I'll never stop trying to make things right." David's resilience and Karen's accountability taught the community an invaluable lesson. Mistakes can be opportunities for growth if met with courage and effort. Their story serves as a lasting reminder that change begins with individuals willing to take the first step. What would you do in a situation like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of resilience and redemption.